Good morning. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina. Today we are on lesson 7 of the Epistle to the Hebrews, and we're covering Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 through 19. This one's called Believe. Do we really believe what we claim to believe? The Bible is a complex book, and sadly, most people pick and choose the parts of the Bible they believe, and very few people, even Christians, simply go by the adage, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. In addition, belief can be a slippery slope. Years ago, I applied for a job that seemed to be a perfect fit for me and was having difficulty teaching tennis as my knees were in bad shape after years of abuse. There were 2 positions, and I went through 4 interviews by boards and was rated as the top candidate by each board. 2 other candidates were hired, and I was devastated. I was actually angry at God and thought he had let me down. Sadly, I had difficulty reading the Bible and praying for about 6 months. Encouragement from Christian friends did not help. I was wallowing in my own pain. Finally, what snapped me out of it was when I thought about Romans 8:28. All things work together for the good to those who love the Lord and are the called according to his purposes. God said it, and either I believed it or I did not believe it. And if I did not, I was calling God a liar. Almost instantaneously, I exited my depression and just decided to trust him again. If your son is hungry, would you give him a stone or bread? The former Hebrew slaves departed Egypt on dry land after God parted the Red Sea. The soldiers of Pharaoh following them drowned when God released the water, and all the Hebrews were spared. They were no longer followed by soldiers, but even with a miracle of that size, the people complained constantly. They chose to worship a golden calf that they had created with their own hands, rather than the God who had saved them. We would think that the 12 plagues, the Red Sea, the Shekinah glory with them every day, God speaking to them when giving the 10 Commandments, supplying them with fresh manna daily. The list goes on. Their unbelief finally angered God, who was slow to anger when they had gotten close to the promised land. They sent spies into the land, and only 2 of those spies came back trusting God. The rest were in fear of the giant inhabitants of that land. Really? God parted the Red Sea and killed their enemies. Remember him doing that? God punished them for their unbelief and would not allow any adults to enter the promised land except for Joshua and Caleb. So the 40-year wait continued until all the unbelievers had died. God would not overlook their unbelief and bless them. When the children of Israel crossed the Jordan, the Ark of the Covenant went before them, and once again, they crossed on dry ground. This time, though, they crossed in belief. Let's read the passage in Hebrews now that deals with that unbelief. Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 through 15 says this, Beware, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. But exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. For we have become partakers of Christ, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast to the end. While it is said, Today, if you will hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. Certainly they provoked God with their unbelief. There can be levels of this. Certainly those not professing to be Christians have the most unbelief. And in our modern culture, it seems that rather than believing and following God and God's laws, people have become the gods of their own lives. Instead of believing that God created man in his own image, many people pick and choose which aspects of the Bible they believe in and which they do not believe in. For example, sexual promiscuity is accepted by society, even though God has not changed his stance on that. Imagine a person saying, "The God I believe in does not have a problem with me sleeping with as many people as I want." It is ludicrous to think that our belief changes God. But in so doing, people are creating their own God, one who does not exist. How many people think the Bible is a fairy tale because of their belief in the theory of evolution? If evolution occurred, why do we not discover skeletons in the midst of that proposed evolutionary process? Even scientists call it the theory of evolution, not the law of evolution. Satan has deceived the masses and led many away from God. If we walked outside in a rainstorm and one person said in belief that it was not raining and that the sun was shining, it wouldn't change the fact that it was raining. We do not change reality by an erroneous belief, but we can change our lives by a belief in God and belief in his word. All of it. Christians can also demonstrate lack of belief in God's word, just as I did in my own life and the story I told before. Unbelief for a non-Christian leads to death, while unbelief for a Christian will lead to life without God's blessings, love, joy, peace, etc. Pride might be the biggest hurdle to Christians and non-Christians when it comes to unbelief in God and in God's word. Some might say that intellectually they just cannot agree with everything in the Bible, but more likely than not, their lack of belief has more to do with God's stance on sin than anything else. When we live by the adage, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die," it demonstrates our pride in doing exactly what we want to do, rather than following God and God's word. Let's finish Hebrews 3. Hebrews 3 verses 16 through 19 says this, "For who, having heard, rebelled? Indeed, was it not all who came out of Egypt, led by Moses? Now with whom was he angry 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose corpses fell in the wilderness? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who did not obey?" So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. There are two key words in this passage, rest and unbelief. What does it mean to enter God's rest? Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30 says this, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Rest in this verse does not refer to heaven, though some verses involving the word rest are referring to our eternal rest. Nor does it refer to the Sabbath day, just as God created for 7 days or for 6 days and rested on the seventh. We are to rest as well. God did not rest because he was tired, but for us that day to recharge is wonderful. Instead, rest in both of the Hebrews 3:18 and Matthew 11:29 quotations above refer to salvation. Before coming to Jesus, we are burdened by the sin debt that has not been paid. And as death is the only payment to satisfy that debt, it is either on us or it is on Jesus. The death of Jesus on the cross only pays for our sin if we are his, if we come to him. Our sin is the heaviest of burdens. When we come to Jesus, it is not a light switch that is turned on and we instantly know everything there is to know. He teaches us, and the more time we spend in the Word, the more we learn. Though this also includes life experiences, when we are applying the words of the Bible to our daily walks and interactions with others. Jesus reminds us, learn from me. Part of that is learning to trust him, rest on his promises, walk by faith, not by sight. And it is okay to fail as long as that failure is not where we remain. Having endured my 6 months of failure to trust God, and then coming out the other side by realizing that by not trusting him, I was calling him a liar, was a benchmark moment for me. Having learned that lesson does not mean it will not have to be learned again, but chances are good it can be learned faster the second time. The unbelieving Jews died in the wilderness and experienced both physical death and spiritual death for their unbelief. This section in Hebrews is a strong admonition for our unbelief as well. Today, the encouragement is to reflect on God and God's word. If we disagree with God, we are sinning, and that unbelief is just as sinful as murder, stealing, etc. Today is a perfect time to believe all that God has told us through his word, while understanding if we fail to agree with him, we're not changing God, and the likely cause is a heart issue in our own lives rather than an intellectual disagreement. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina. Have a blessed day.